Hi everybody, it's Diane. I have come back and thought I would do just a little bit more for you. So it means we're all in this shutdown and isolation period. So I just thought I'd look at leadership, and my question is, how does a person like Moses, get to the point of Deuteronomy 34 verse 1 to 10? Well, let's start at Exodus. Exodus chapter 3 and verse 1 to 10. So we start with the conversation Moses had with God when tending the flock of Jethro. And what we're looking at here is his example of leadership. So that's it. We start with the conversation Moses had with God. So he started off tending, as we pick it up, it's Exodus 3 verse 1 to 10, and he's tending the flock of Jethro. And this is where an angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from the bush. Moses initially was terrified as God speaks to him from the bush, and what appeared to be an angel was God speaking to him. So God tells Moses that he has heard the cry from his people and how he has seen the ill treatment of them by the Egyptian rulers. And note this, it concerned God greatly. God doesn't feed Moses little by little. He lets him in on the whole game plan in Exodus, verse 8 to 10. As he says, I'm going to bring them up out of the land, and even explains what will happen next and where they will be going. But God does not reveal the how, not yet anyway. God finally says that I am sending you. I made you. You are a tool in my hand. See verse 11 to 12. Moses must have thought, great God, you're going to save my people. It sounds like a good plan. I will be behind you. I'll go all the way. And then God pulled Moses up suddenly, as Moses realized it was all going to rest on his shoulders. Every leader that has not yet become a leader will understand how Moses must have felt when he was given this enormous task. It wasn't even broken to him gently. So what came next was expected. As Moses says, God, please send someone else. It's verse 13. Haven't we all said that during our Christian journey? God, send someone else. Didn't Jesus also say in Luke 22 verse 42, Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done. Even Jesus understood the enormity of his task of the crucifixion and wished for it to be taken away from him. We too have to understand when leadership is being presented to us, that is only just the beginning of the journey, as it was for Moses. How many times have we heard this as we have a very similar conversation with God as Moses did in Exodus, verse 11. Who am I that I should go? God's answer, I will be with you. What if they won't listen? God's answer, tell them I sent you. What if they don't believe me? God's answer, what's that in your hand? I'm not a good speaker. God's answer, I am with you. I made you. You are a tool in my hand. Oh God, please send someone else. That's verse 13. During this time, God was showing Moses that if he did not trust God with himself, then neither would anybody else trust him enough to follow him. Moses firstly had to confront his own fears, then the work could begin in turning Moses into a great leader, a leader of a great nation. What did God have to do to build Moses' confidence in himself? That God was with him, and for the Hebrews to believe that Moses was their man and that he could set them free from the bondages of slavery. Moses had much ahead of him as he bartered with Pharaoh to let his people go. This tested not only Pharaoh, but Moses in his leadership skills, as he learnt to be persistent and continue to believe that Pharaoh will let his people go. It is possible that it could have taken up to 3 months, possibly a year, before Pharaoh finally gave in and let the people go. How long would you wait before giving up? While waiting for the promises of God to come to fruition? A day, a week, a month, or a year? The plagues also tested Moses as he had to face his adversity with the same request, let my people go. Another mark of Moses' leadership was that there was no compromise. So the plagues, how long were they? We do know the duration of 3 of the plagues, as it's outlined in Exodus. The first lasted 7 days. That's Exodus 7, verse 25. The 9th lasted 3 days. Exodus 10, 21 to 23. And the 10th was for 1 night, beginning at midnight. That's Exodus 12, 29 to 31. During this time, Pharaoh was shown to be human as he feared, became struck down with disease, and finally the death of his son. This also demonstrated to the Hebrews and to Moses the power was with God, God showed how, through the transfer of power from Pharaoh to Moses, that now it looked like it was truly believable that they would be heading for land full of milk and honey. God also showed, through this demonstration of power, that Pharaoh was not the designer of destinies, but God was. The Hebrews, under Pharaoh's rule, had been downtrodden for over 400 years. God was not only showing Moses how to be a leader, but he was showing the Hebrew nation that he was with them and that they should follow Moses. Then they leave Egypt after several plagues later. Pharaoh's heart goes from hardened to heartbreak as he relents and lets all of the Egyptian slaves go. All of Egypt's slaves go. This is a lesson for us all. Don't have a stubborn heart. Leaving Egypt was not the end. It was the beginning of all things, as the Hebrews, who had been used to being told what to do by their Egyptian masters, were now being asked to believe for themselves as they reached the Red Sea. As Hebrews 11:29 states, by faith the people passed through the Red Sea as on dry land, but when the Egyptians tried to do so, they were drowned. This demonstrated that this God that they and Moses followed even had power over the land and sea. Moses knew he could not do this task alone, and knew his weaknesses, as he had expressed this to God earlier in Exodus. So what did Moses do to ensure he had the strength to combat all the complaints, trials and tribulations that came with the huge task of leading an estimated 2.4 million people out of Egypt, including the women, old men and children? What did Moses have to do? Moses talked to God. It's a reality of his character, and it's the most important quality of godly leadership. Moses listened and obeyed. God said to Moses, I've got a dream, and I want you to help carry it out. Moses had faith. What is faith? It's the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. One thing we learn about faith from the life of Moses is that it causes people to step up in ways they never would have before. Moses moved forward fearlessly because he knew who he was. He belonged to God. He knew what he was living for God's purpose, not his own. He knew where he stood with God. And here's what he did with faith. Here are some of Moses' accomplishments. He led the people of Israel out of Egyptian captivity. He led the people of Israel across the Red Sea. He led the people of Israel for 40 years in the desert. He personally received the 10 Commandments directly from God. He is credited with the writing of the first 5 books of the Old Testament. He's an amazing person and an amazing leader. One of the things that stands out about Moses to me is that for 40 years he never let go of the vision God had given him. The people complained, but he continually reminded them of who God is. The people sinned, but he continually brought them back to God. Moses would not see the fulfillment of the promised land God would give them, but he was faithful as a leader to make sure his people got there. I don't know anyone who doesn't want to make some kind of positive difference in the world. Ask yourself, can you be that sort of person to make a difference in this world? Who better to learn from than Moses? Thank you so much for listening. I hope that has blessed you. It has blessed me, and I'm going to learn quite a lot and continue to learn. Bless you, and thank you again, guys. Thank you for listening.